Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the University of Dundee Master of Education webinar. My name is Helen Spiropoulos. I'm the Admissions Manager at Stafford Global, and joining me this evening all the way from the university is Dr. Richard. Good evening to you, Dr. Richard.
Hi, Helen. How everybody? Nice to meet you all.
Good. It's so nice to see you again, and I've looked here on my right-hand side and I can see that we have applicants from, I think it's Dubai, and as well as Qatar and KSA. Okay, so welcome everyone. And how we are going to do the presentation this evening is I'm just briefly going to introduce you to Stafford Global. I'm then going to hand you over to Dr. Richard, who's going to take you through the presentation. And at the end of the session, you will have the opportunity to type out any questions that you wish to ask Dr. Richard or myself. I am going to be looking at these questions quite carefully because a lot of them are similar, if not identical. So I am going to start to group them together. So please do listen out for that very important question and answer. Okay, so let's get started. Now, Stafford Global has been in the education industry for over 30 years. We are a resource centre for 6 UK universities, one of which is the University of Dundee, and we have been an official partner of the University of Dundee for quite some time now with the Master of Education programme. Now, we do offer a variety of programs ranging from certificates to diplomas, bachelor's degrees, masters, right through until doctorates. So we really do have all the programs that would suit your personal or professional needs. Now, the mere fact that you're here with us this evening means that you have been in communication with one of our experienced academic consultants. And we are here to assist you throughout the entire application process and to make sure that you do get that very, very important unconditional offer. We do also offer some administrative support as well as some academic support. So I'm now going to hand you over to Dr. Richard, who is going to take you through the program, and I will be joining you again towards the end of the session. Over to you, Dr. Richard.
Helen, thank you so much, and yeah, welcome everybody again to this this webinar tonight. Delighted to have so many people joining us from different parts of the world. So I'm going to take you through the presentation for the next 15-20 minutes or so, but I'll do a quick introduction to myself first. So my name is Richard Holme, and I'm a reader and also a lecturer in education at the University of Dundee. I've worked here for about for over 10 years now. And prior to working at the university, I worked in school-based education. So I was an elementary, primary school teacher, and also worked in secondary schools as well. But before that, I had some experience of working in the adult education sector and also in the manufacturing sector, working in training roles and management leadership roles. So I've got a broad background with where education runs through that as a common theme. I've worked on the Master of Education programme for a large number of years. Most of the time I've been here at the University of Dundee, and I was previously the programme director. I was a programme lead. I currently do a lot of teaching with the online, the face-to-face students, but also I work with the online students and the distance learning students, of which you would be part of that particular group. My research interests are professional development and professional learning of teachers, and in particular, I look at things like reflective practice, informal teacher professional development and professional learning. And that's a big part of the M.Ed, the Master of Education programme. And my doctoral studies focused on something similar, and I publish in this area around something called grassroots professional development or grassroots professional learning of teachers. I was a master's student myself when I was a teacher, so many of you will be classroom practitioners or education professionals who want to study part-time, and I did that myself a number of years ago when I was still in the classroom, and I got a huge amount out of it. I got a great experience studying, learning about research, learning about concepts and theories, and then being able to apply them in the classroom to enhance my practice and ultimately to help me develop my career as well. So if you've got any questions about that, more than happy to discuss that. But before we move on to specifics about the Master of Education programme, I thought I'll tell you a little bit about the University of Dundee. You might be aware of Dundee as a city, but if you're not, we're one of the biggest cities in Scotland after Edinburgh and Glasgow. We're based slightly to the north of Edinburgh and to the south of Aberdeen on the east coast of Scotland. And we're very proud of what we do at Dundee. We talk about how we're able to make a difference and that we deliver impact for our students, but they in turn are able to work with the young people, maybe if they're working in sectors like medicine or they're working in disciplines such as law, then they get this opportunity to make a difference across their sector, but also across the world as well. We try wherever possible to use enterprising approaches, and we embed all this in our curriculum and our teaching. And we have a strong local representation. We work with schools, with students who are based locally, but we also have a strong international and global reputation as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few slides. We're a modern university, and a number of our departments and our faculties, including the faculty that the education department is part of, work to solve 21st century modern problems that we face. And the strap line, or the tag that we use for our university, is that we aim to transform lives. So hopefully, if this is something you're aiming to do with your career, or in future, or you're currently doing this, then we'll be a good match for you. So you probably know when you're looking for universities to study with that rankings are particularly important. So these are some of our recent rankings in the last 2 or 3 years. That we were the top 10 in the UK for education in the Guardian University Guide in 2022. We were rated in the QS World University Rankings as well in the same year in the top 200 for graduate employment. We scored very highly for climate action in 2020 and 2021 in the Times Higher Education Awards. And again, in the same rankings, we were one of the world's top 250 universities. And we also have a high reputation for impact with our research as well. So there's just some of the rankings, and you can do a bit of research into this yourself if you want to find out a little bit more about the University of Dundee. I should probably add as well that one of the images there is people at graduation. As you'd be joining as a distance learning and online student, we do invite people to come along for graduation. So even though you've not started the course yet, if you're still thinking about it, you're considering putting an application in, and you study remotely, you study out of Scotland, out of Dundee, we do encourage people to come for graduation. It's always wonderful when somebody's been working with you and they've been studying for a number of years, maybe remotely, and then they get the chance to come and visit the city that's been the home to their university. So you'll see there on the image people celebrating their graduation at the end of that journey. So what is the Master of Education? You might already be familiar with this, but just to give you a little bit of background to it, you're probably familiar with courses such as MBAs, so Master of Business Administration, and these are usually courses that people who are studying business do after their undergraduate studies. They have similar master's level qualifications in things like engineering, or it could be in finance as well. Well, education is no different. So the M.Ed is a specific master's level qualification with a focus on education, and it's a suite of postgraduate modules, and it's particularly designed for people people working in education and educators who want to develop professionally. We base our teaching on principles such as reflective practice, but we also give you an opportunity for work-based inquiry and to carry out action research to be able to learn more about areas that you're interested in, topics, subjects and specialism that you wish to develop as a professional. We are recognised by the General Teaching Council for Scotland, but it's really important to stress that although we're recognised by the organisation that accredits teachers in Scotland, this particular course does not qualify you to teach in a UK state school. Now, the reason for that is because the GTCS for Scotland, the programmes that will allow you to teach in UK schools require you to have undergone a relevant placement in a school. So we don't offer that as part of the M.Ed. We have an alternative programme which is delivered in country, in Scotland, which allows you to qualify. So the M.Ed is very much designed for people who are already working in education and they want to take their learning to the next level as well. So if this is something you're thinking about a qualification that will allow you to teach in the UK, then please do bear this in mind when you're thinking about applying. Now, there will be many countries in different international settings where being qualified to master's level and having relevant experience, which you may have, may be sufficient for you to go and work as a teacher in that particular region or that particular country. So our advice is check that out for yourself, because the relevant government or registry body will have more information on that. And it does change year on year, depending which country you're in and which region you're working in, or which area of a particular country. So we're not able to give that level of specific advice, but we do recommend that you check that first if this is of importance to you. So I've already mentioned that it's a distance learning course. It's delivered part-time, but we also have a fast track option. So the normal route, which I'll give you a bit more detail on in a few minutes time, is that you would probably study over 3 years, but there is an option there to do it maybe in 2.5 or 2 years. There's also the possibility for you to have some recognition of prior learning. So if you already have some master's level credits, you can inquire about that, and we may be able to give you accelerated learning to the program. We use what's called a blended learning approach. So our materials are available for you through the virtual learning environment. So this is an online portal that you can access. You're probably familiar with similar things in other walks of life, or if you've done any training or professional learning before. But we also supplement that with the option for face-to-face sessions with experienced tutors or with the module leaders who will give you guidance and help and support and tutoring as you need it. We're also very proud of the fact that we're one of the only universities that are recognised and accredited by the International Baccalaureate. And we have a range of different routes which would allow you to, once you've completed them, to also apply for one of the various IB certificates. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that right now, but you might have questions about that later. And if we're not able to answer them today, we can certainly follow up later and give you more information on that. We've also got information available about that on our website. One of the other real benefits from studying the M.Ed at the University of Dundee is we've got students from a wide range of sectors of education and also around the globe. So although I mentioned that my background was primary or elementary teaching and also some secondary school teaching experience, my background of working in the manufacturing sector, working in training roles and adult development roles as well, meant that I've got this opportunity to work with students perhaps not from the traditional school teaching background as well. And we have many colleagues that do the same. And sometimes when we're working with groups of students or small groups of students, or we have maybe online seminars or webinars, it's really great when you've got people from different countries, from different education systems, with very sort of cultural different experiences that they bring along. And it's a chance for us to learn from each other as well. Depending on your interests, your background, the focus for your specialism, you can select different modules that will build up your Master of Education, and I'll talk a little bit more about the named awards that you can complete as well a little bit later. So the fact that you're here already means that you would probably already interested in studying at master's level, and these could be some of the reasons that you would like to undertake master's level study. These were several of the reasons that I myself undertook master's study many years ago, and you're probably familiar with them. So you're going to develop and deepen and extend your knowledge in subject-specific areas, but also in education in general. Often it shifts the way that you actually view the world, and we talk about this idea of worldviews, and depending where you've lived, where you've grown up, where you've worked, your own educational experiences, you bring with you certain experiences. By working with different professionals from around the world and different staff, it broadens and it changes those perspectives as well. I've mentioned that we've got these different specialisms through the Master of Education, the M.Ed at Dundee, and this is an opportunity for you to develop that specialism, get a real depth of expertise in the area you're interested in, and then from a career perspective, it'll help you develop transferable skills. It can maybe give you better career prospects, and in many cases it enhances and increases opportunities for career progression. And on completion of the Masters, often we find that students then go on to take on leadership roles, or they're already in leadership roles. It allows them to apply for new jobs or new opportunities elsewhere as well, or to take on extra responsibility within the school or the organisation that they're working within as well. And as I've mentioned, in some countries it may meet the requirements for you to qualify as a teacher, so it's always worth checking that out on a local level. So that's some of the reasons to study Masters. Well, why would you study an M.Ed at the University of Dundee? I've mentioned our reputation for education, the expertise of the staff that work with us and their experience as well. We've got very good local links with education agencies, but also on an international level. The work that we do with the International Baccalaureate helps us stand out from some of the other universities that offer this similar course. You'll be part of a multinational cohort. So I've delivered teaching sessions where I've had people who have joined the webinars maybe in the United States. So we try to plan our teaching at a time that suits as many of the cohort as possible. So I've led sessions before we've had somebody from the United States, so for them it might be quite early in the morning, maybe at breakfast time. We've had people maybe in Europe or the UK or possibly parts of the Middle East where it's during the day for them, and then we've had people possibly in the evening who maybe in Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia, places like that. And it's great when you're there and it's a different time of day and you've got different experiences, and people maybe at the beginning about to go to work and then people in the middle of the day as well. So that multinational element really is an advantage that we think that we've got of our course here. We focus on your practice, your professional experience as much as possible. So although we will have a very strong basis in theory and literature and research, what we do is we make sure you have an opportunity to apply that to what you're doing on a day-to-day basis as well. And that helps you develop as a professional and helps you develop your career. And alongside that, you've got this opportunity to develop leadership skills and also as a researcher. So if you're not intending to develop and work in management or leadership or take on extra responsibility that way, you may be considering a research focused career, possibly in something like academia. So we've talked a little bit about specialisms, and the way that the modular course works at the University of Dundee is there are around 11 modules that you can select for, or 10 or 11 modules you can select from. And depending on these modules that you choose, you can build up a specialism in one of these areas. Now, if you choose to select from a range of different modules, there's the core modules, and then there's a few specific specialist modules, you would exit with a Masters of Education with a named award, Leading, Learning and Teaching. However, if you decided to go down one of the other routes and you specifically selected certain modules, for example, our Leadership and Organisational Development module, and then you focused your dissertation, your thesis, your final double module project on leadership, you could exit with a Master of Education and M.Ed in Educational Leadership. The other options for you are International Education, Inclusive Education, or Nursery and Early Years Education. So if you're interested in one of those named awards, we'll be able to give you some advice and guidance on which modules you would like to select for that. So we have a few core modules, and these core modules would be the Reflecting Upon Practice module, which would come first. So all students that are doing the full M.Ed will start with Reflecting Upon Practice. You would then have another core module, which is Research Methods, and the Research Methods module prepares you for completing your thesis, your dissertation, your research project. But you would also pick two optional modules, and depending on which ones you selected, you would have the option to take a particular named award. So we have a module in International Education, we have a module in Inclusive Education, we have a module in the Wellbeing of Children and Young People, we have a very popular module which is Innovation in Education, and another very popular module is Leadership and Organisational Development. And then the final core module that everybody does is the dissertation module, and that's a double module. So normally working part-time, whereas these modules would be over one semester, the double module for the dissertation would be over 2 semesters, so a full academic year, 46 weeks, to allow you to plan, to then execute, and then write up a significant piece of research. And that can be empirical research, where you collect data, you maybe carry out some interviews, some surveys, you maybe use some sort of techniques such as observation, or you use some form of secondary data. So you don't actually have people involved, but you maybe use paper-based resources, you maybe do a literature review, a systematic literature review, or you do an analysis of things like textbooks or something like that. So depending which route you do, you can select different modules, you can get a different named award at the end, but you will always finish, if you go through the full Master of Education, the full M.Ed, with the dissertation research project at the end of it. So here's just an example of what you would do here. So say you were going for the Leading, Learning and Teaching named award, you'd pick any 2 modules from the list I've just given you there, and your dissertation could be on any topic whatsoever. So that's more of a generalist Master of Education M.Ed qualification, and that's the choice that I did. I picked, when I did my M.Ed, a module around innovation in education. I did another one around where I specialised in children's literature, and then my dissertation topic was around behaviour management in a classroom setting. So mine was very generalist. But if you were going to go down the route of educational leadership or international education or inclusive education or nursery and early education, you would pick one of those specific optional modules, and then what you would do is you would specialise in your dissertation on the topic that you've focused in on. You've still got the possibility to pick another optional module. So for example, if you wanted to focus on educational leadership and you selected the leadership and organisational development module to give you that named award, you could still pick international education, or you could still pick innovation in education, or you could still pick inclusive education to supplement that, so you're still getting that breadth whilst developing your specialism at the same time. Now, we've talked a little bit about the International Baccalaureate, but I'll give you a bit more detail about this. There are different exit points, which I'm going to talk to you about on the next slide. But if you decided you wanted to complete the M.Ed and also gain one of the International Baccalaureate certificates, then there are certain options available for you. So the first one is that you can complete the Certificate in Leadership Practice. Now, this would be exiting at the postgraduate certificate stage, so it would just be 2 modules, and there's no prerequisite for International Baccalaureate experience for that. The next option is that you could exit with a full M.Ed with an advanced certificate in leadership research, and again, this doesn't require any particular prerequisite of International Baccalaureate experience. The third option is the advanced certificate in learning and teaching research, and this is part of the full M.Ed as well. But for this one, what you would need to do is you need to have 3 years teaching experience in an IB school by the time you've finished the M.Ed. Now, for all of these, you would apply for these at the beginning. You would say this is what you wanted to do, because the modules you pick would dictate whether you could do this or not. And then at the end, what would happen is you would then be given guidance on applying to the International Baccalaureate for one of those 3 certificates, whichever one was relevant. The International Baccalaureate then contact ourselves to confirm that you've completed it and you fulfilled all the requirements, and then you will be issued with your certificate from the International Baccalaureate, in addition to your M.Ed certificate on graduation, or if it was the first example, the certificate of leadership practice, the PG cert would be issued to you as well. So if you've got specific questions about that, then feel free to put those in at the end, or if we can't answer them today, we can certainly follow up with this a little bit later as well. So this is a typical M.Ed student who is studying the part-time route over 3 years. What you do in year 1 is you would start with reflecting upon practice, which is the module that everybody begins with. This is a module that I lead for the full-time on-campus students, and it's just the same experience that you'd be getting online. So if you've got questions specifically about that, I'm more than happy to chat about that. You then take on your first optional module, and that will be in the 2nd semester of your 1st year. So we've got 2 start points during the year, which we can perhaps tell you a little bit about later. The next one being coming up for, I think, if you're applying now, the next start point would be in April of next year, but we've got those dates at the end. And then the next semester would be the following October, November time, and that's when you'd move on to the 2nd module. In year 2, you do another optional module, which we've already talked about, and you would have your research methods module that would follow on from that as well. And at that point, you've got 120 credits at master's level, so you've got the option to exit with a postgraduate diploma at that stage. However, a lot of students choose to continue for the full M.Ed, and then they finish in their final year with their dissertation module. And at that point, they've achieved 180 credits. It's what we call SCQF, which is the Scottish Curriculum and Qualifications Framework, level 11, but basically it's master's level. And this will give you the option to then finish with the full M.Ed as well. And at different stages, just depending on which route you've picked and which modules you've picked, there may be IB eligibility as well. So here's a typical example for the IB route through this. So we've mentioned here, this is for the, if you're going to do the full M.Ed, and you'd start with the leadership and organisational development module. You'd then do reflecting upon leadership in the IB. You would then have a selection of the choices from the modules that we gave you before and research methods, and then you would finish with your dissertation, which would have to have a focus on both leadership and the International Baccalaureate. So that would ensure that you've got the coverage, the knowledge and the expertise that the IB require. You'd then complete the M.Ed with the University of Dundee and have your certificate issued for that, and you'd apply to the IB for your IB certificate as well. So that's the route. They're broadly similar, there'd just be slightly different module choices along the way. So the study duration, usually part-time, you would complete one 30-credit module in a 17-week period. So that's a semester long. Now, you would be introduced to the module in the first week. You'd get communication from your module leader. You'd be given access to the virtual learning environment and the My Dundee area that we call it. You would log in through the University of Dundee website, and all the materials would be made available for you. Communication would then come through email or through that module area to you from the module tutor. You'd have a chance to meet with your tutor, and there will be face-to-face teaching delivered online, delivered remotely, and there'd also be asynchronous materials for you to engage with. There'd be activities for you to complete as well. And then at the end of that 17-week period, you'd be submitting an assignment, and in most cases, this will be a 4,000-word assignment. We're just in the process of changing this this semester, and it used to be a 5,000-word assignment, but we're moving towards a slightly shorter assignment length for the 30-credit modules. The only exception to this is the 60-credit dissertation module, and you get a lot longer for that. And the reason for that is that you might need to collect data to carry out a piece of research, so you might need to get ethical approval, and the planning process is a little bit longer for that. We recommend a notional study time of anything from 15 to 20 hours a week. It sounds like quite a lot, but this will give you the best chance of achieving as high a grade as possible. And some of that will be the online teaching where you'll be meeting face to face, but a vast majority of it will be you working in your own time on activities and tasks, engaging with materials that the tutors and the module leaders have set for you. Now, there is a fast track option, but we are very, we try to advise people to think very carefully about this, because if you're trying to complete two 30-credit modules within a 17-week period and you're still working, this is a real challenge, because the notional study time per module is 15 to 20 hours, so approximately 17.5 hours. When you double that up, that becomes 35 hours. If you're also working full time in a 35 to 40-hour week, then you're now working 70 to 80 hours. And we often find that when people sign up for this, that it really puts a strain on them, both professionally and on their personal life as well. So we do say, think carefully about that. The exception again to this fast track route is that when it comes to dissertation, we don't let you complete the dissertation within the 17 weeks, because there's just no possibility for you fitting that in. You need to design your research project, you need to carry out the research, the data collection, you need to execute it, you may require ethical approval as well. So to ensure that you can do the best possible, you can do justice to yourself with the research project, that final 60-credit module runs over an entire year. So that gives you an option to complete in 2 years if you wish to do that. So that's a little bit about the study expectations and the duration of studies. So the entry requirements, we need you to have an undergraduate degree. We don't dictate any particular discipline, so you don't need a degree in education studies. It can be anything. It can be a science discipline. It can be something like business or accounting. It can be something like a social science, maybe philosophy. It could be psychology. So we don't mind what your undergraduate degree is, but you do need a qualification at degree level. If it was not taught in English, then our English language requirement is academic IELTS at 6.5 or equivalent. There's more information on the University of Dundee website, but I'm sure Stafford will be able to give you some guidance on that as well. Now, we also ask, because of the nature of the topics we're covering, that you have some form of teaching or education experience. So we need you to be an educator who's currently working in a relevant setting. So if you've got absolutely no educational experience whatsoever, other than being a student yourself, then we would need you to get some experience first. So it could be volunteering, it could be working in a school, maybe in some sort of voluntary setting or an educational setting, but we need you to have that experience so that when you are looking at some of the case studies, you're looking at the literature and the research, and there is the professional development elements to, and the reflective element to what we're teaching you, then you've got that practical experience to relate that to as well. Now, the exception here again is if you've got previous work experience but you're not currently doing it. So maybe you've worked as a teacher maybe a few years ago, you've had a career break, or you've changed direction and you want to re-engage with this, then that would be acceptable as well, because you've done this previously and you can relate back to that prior experience too. So you don't necessarily have to be working in education right at the moment. So that's our entry requirements. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about graduation timescales. So again, this might seem quite a long time off if you're just thinking about applying at the moment and you're considering your application. But what we do is we hold something called a Board of Examiner meeting, and at this point, the decision is made on all the students who've met the requirements and who will be graduating. So there's 2 graduation opportunities based on those dates. There's one in June and there's one in November. And it'd be great if you could come along and you can attend that if you want. Now, what happens is our registry department, this is our sort of administration team at the university that look after sort of student records and things, they'll contact people if you're possibly eligible to graduate, but this is dependent on your passing your final module. So one thing that we say to people is be careful if you're planning to come and you're booking your flights and your hotels and everything, if you've not actually got confirmation of having passed all the courses yet. So sometimes, unfortunately, people come through graduation and they've not actually reached that stage yet. So we do warn you a little bit about that. Now, the other thing that we get asked a lot is could we give some sort of letter of confirmation before you get your final certificate? So for example, maybe you were due to, you'd finished your studies in the summer in the UK, which is sort of July, August time or something like that, but you're not due to graduate until November. You won't get your final graduation certificate, but you might need some confirmation for an employer. So we can generate that for you, but we won't actually send out the certificates until the graduation date as well. This is just a university rule as well. So that's just a little bit about graduations, because this is sometimes something that people bear in mind when they start the course if they're thinking they need to be finished by a certain time. So we've nearly come to the end of the presentation here, but I thought I'll leave you with a couple of comments from some of our students. We get very positive feedback. We've already talked about the rankings and how well we're regarded around the world and in the UK and our background in education. So some quotes here that one student here has commented on how this opportunity to carry out an inquiry into their own practice really helped them look for areas to improve and to develop. Another student commented that in coming to understand professionalism and specifically reflection, which is a big part of the course, they've been empowered to take their teaching to the next level. Comment on here on the support, how it's been excellent. And then finally, something that we're very proud of is the individual tutor support. So on all the modules, you'll be given access to a specific tutor. There'll be a module leader, but you may also have a different person that gives you specific tutor support. And this student is saying that they're dedicated, efficient, and that they were really welcoming and friendly. And I mentioned at the beginning, I've been in Dundee at the university for 10 years now. And I'm not originally from Dundee. I was originally born and raised in the northwest of England, near Manchester, somewhere you might have heard of. And then I lived in the northeast of England and also other parts of the UK in London. And I've lived here for over 10 years now. And Dundee really is a welcoming, friendly place. We're a medium-sized university, so that gives us the advantage of having experts, having access to good resources, but also we're not too big that you wouldn't be well known to the staff and the tutor team and the people working with you as well. So that's probably a good point to finish on. A little bit of information here about the tuition fees. Obviously, Stafford will be able to give you some more information on that, and the deadlines are for the next group of applications will be the 24th of March, and then as I mentioned, the next group of modules will be end of April 2024. So okay, I've talked there for about 20 minutes, I think, Helen. So I don't know if you want to come back in again at this point, and I think we're going to have an opportunity for some questions, aren't we?
Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Richard. That was very, very informative. And yes, I have been looking at quite a few questions in the background, so I'm just going to dive right into that.
Great.
Okay, so Lindsay's question is, I am quite excited about the various specializations that you have. My question is, can I do 2 specializations at the same time? Or can I do one and then come back later in the year to do another one?
Right. So what a good question that is there. So if you're planning to complete the full Master of Education, the full M.Ed, we can only give you one named award. Now, this depends on what you want to do with it. So my named award when I did a Master's was a Master of Education in Leading, Learning and Teaching. So it's very much the general one. Now, if you wanted to have a specific named award, maybe you were going to become an expert, a leader in inclusive practice, inclusion or special educational needs. In that case, you might really want to have that named award, M.Ed in inclusion or M.Ed in inclusive practice. Maybe that you're thinking that your next 10, 20 years of your career, you're going to be working in an international setting. So you want your specialism to be international education. So you would want the M.Ed in international education. Now, as a result, you can only pick one of those named awards. But the way that you can pick you can select your modules is, maybe you're interested in inclusion and international education. You could decide which one of those you want as your named award. Maybe you decide to go for international education. So what you would do is you would have the international education as your first optional module. But because you're still interested in inclusive practice, you could also do the optional module the next year in inclusion. You could then, in your dissertation, select a project that maybe looks at issues around inclusion in international settings. So you could use your dissertation as an opportunity to explore both of them. So yes, you can probably pursue 2 specialisms, but on your final certificate, there's only an option to have one named award on there. So you'd have to pick whichever one it was. The way you could possibly have 2 specialisms was, I think you could possibly do 2 separate certificates, but that wouldn't be a full M.Ed then, it wouldn't be a full Master's. You would possibly do 1 certificate and then you would perhaps come back again and do another certificate. And I don't know whether that would perhaps suit people or not, but I think that's probably fairly standard for Master's level qualifications when you're looking at a named award at the top level, is that you can only really pick one named award. But within the course itself, yes, you can definitely have more than one specialism that you can develop. So I hope has that answered the question, Helen, do you think? Has that explained things?
Yes, yes, quite in depth there as well. And Lindsay, you can always get in touch with your consultant at Stafford Global, and we can guide you a little bit on that as well. Okay, so Henry's question is, I have been teaching for 20 years, and I'm currently a principal in Qatar. I'm a little concerned about the entry criteria, as I do not have a bachelor degree, but I do have quite a lot of professional qualifications. Will I be accepted into the master's program?
Okay, so from the perspective of the University of Dundee and the M.Ed program, we can make exceptions if people have equivalent experience, they have extensive experience. And I do know of a case relatively recently where somebody in a similar situation, they'd been a principal of school, they'd set their own school up working in an international setting, and we looked at their application and we took that on board. And Christy Hurd, who is our programs manager, would look at that and would probably discuss it with the program leadership, which is currently Anna Robb. Now, Helen, from your perspective, would you have any considerations of that as well? I'm wondering if staff would have rules on.
Right. Well, we always advise our applicants to have a bachelor degree and obviously the relevant working experience. But you are correct. You know, we try and look at the applications holistically. If we feel that it is something that the university will accept, and you're quite correct, we do get in touch with Christy at the university to get her guidance on that as well. But it's very important that we do look at your CV. Do send us all the qualifications that you have completed, because as Dr. Richard has said, if these qualifications are on par or equivalent to a UK level 6 honours degree, then it is something that the university can look at. But it's very difficult to make a decision right now on that question. We do have to obviously look at all the documentation. So Henry, yes, our academic consultant will be in touch with you, and perhaps we can guide you as to what documents need to be submitted for evaluation. Okay. Yeah. Good.
Great.
And, all right, so my first question is actually quite interesting as well, is do any of the teachers come out to the classrooms and do teacher assessments?
Okay, right. So that's a really good question. It's something we get asked quite regularly. Because this is a professional qualification, a master's level for people who are already teaching, it doesn't have with it a teaching qualification. So there won't be any visits to see you in class. There won't be any requirements for that as part of the course, and we don't have that built into it. What there'll be is in the module, there'll be opportunities for you to make connections to your classroom practice, to the teaching, the education setting that you're in, and working that into the activities, to the discussion groups we might have, and into the assessments as well. So, for example, in the Reflecting Upon Practice module, which is one of the first modules that we deliver, part of the assignment is for you to think about your past, your current, and your future development, and we encourage you to keep a reflective diary, reflective log. So you could be making notes, you could be writing about your teaching experience, and very much carrying out self-assessment. And then in the assignment, what you might want to do is you might want to evidence this by including that as an appendix in your submission, the reflections, maybe some examples of some possibly planning you've been doing, or maybe some evaluations of your own teaching that even possibly been given by somebody else, by maybe one of your peers, one of your colleagues, or maybe even a head teacher or a principal or a leader in your school as well. So as part of the course, there won't be any requirement, there won't be any evaluation of your teaching, but we will very much be asking you to be thinking about, to be reflecting on, and to be considering that classroom practice and bringing that into your studies and into your assignments and assessments. I hope that's, yeah, I hope that's.
I think that did answer that question. Good. Okay, and then we have an interesting question as well from Mohanad. You had mentioned, Dr. Richard, that the tutors are available. My question is, how available are they? Can I contact them via phone? Can we have any Skype calls? How is that managed?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'll use the Reflecting Upon Practice module again. It's one of the initial modules as an example. So the module would start, and currently Dr. Pete Wright is our module leader for that particular module for the online cohort of students. And Pete's an experienced academic. He was at UCL in London, I think, prior to being at Dundee. He moved here recently, and his background is secondary maths teaching, but he's also got a broad range of other experience and expertise in education and academia. And Pete will get in touch, and he would organise a welcome webinar where all the students are allowed to join that, and that will be delivered live. And we use for that our virtual learning environment platform, which is called My Dundee. It uses a software which you may have come across, or a platform you may have come across, called Blackboard. This is an international company, and this is embedded within the University of Dundee My Dundee platform, where you access the learning materials as well. And then once you've had those initial sessions, there'll be follow-up teaching, which sessions planned during the semester, which you can join. Now, if it doesn't quite work for you, maybe you've got commitments, maybe work related, that clash with that, or the time zones are perhaps a little bit difficult for you, maybe because you've got caring responsibilities at home or something, then they're always recorded so you can watch them back later. The module leaders are always available to answer questions via email. So that's our main source of communication. You'll be given a University of Dundee email account, and you'll be able to communicate directly with the module leaders. But you'll also be allocated a tutor. Now, on some of the smaller modules, the module leader may also be your tutor. So they will give all the support and all the guidance. But for a bigger module like Reflecting Upon Practice, if there's, say, 50 or 100 students, then Pete might not be the tutor for all of those students. So you may be allocated another tutor, and then you have the opportunity to communicate with that particular tutor, who will be an experienced academic who will know the module, will know the subject matter really well. and they will be able to give you, they'll be able to arrange possibly a call through. We wouldn't use Skype, we use Teams. So the University of Dundee uses Teams a lot. So they could arrange an appointment through that at a time that would suit you and suit them. And they could have a chat through, maybe a 30-minute appointment to talk through things. The other option is, if that doesn't quite work for you, is for all the modules, you'll be given an opportunity for a formative submission, and usually that's 10% of the final submission. So you'll be able to send approximately 500 words of written work to your allocated tutor, and they will give you some feedback on that, whether it's through an email, whether it's some annotations on your piece of written work, or whether it is a 30-minute maybe tutorial online where you can meet them remotely as well. So yeah, so you'll be given support from the module leader, who does a majority of the teaching, and a tutor that will help you on the program as well, on the module as well, as you move forward. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an idea about how it works. It becomes more obvious once you've done the first module, and they usually follow the same sort of pattern as well, although there might be slight differences depending on the number of students on each module, and depending on the assessments that are being planned for you, and depending on the topics that you're covering and that kind of thing. So.
Good, excellent. I hope, Mukhanad, that actually answers your question there. And Anjitha, and I hope I've pronounced that correctly, Anjitha. Apologies if I haven't pronounced your name correctly. I am planning on going back to India. And so my question is, will this be recognized in India? Can I teach with this qualification?
Okay, that's a great question. One we get regularly, and we're not able to advise on whether it's accepted as a teaching qualification in different international settings. And the reason for this is because it can change from time to time. Sometimes governments change, the accrediting bodies for teaching in certain countries can change and can alter. The exception to that is the IB element of it, because we have been accredited by the IB as well. So if you have specific questions about that and working in IB schools, then yes, please do get in touch with us about that, and we can talk you through that. So for India, I can't answer that question, and I guess it would depend on the national requirements, the regional requirements as well, and the individual schools as well. What we do have to stress is that there isn't an assessed teaching practice or practicum as part of this particular course. So if you are communicating with the accrediting body in your particular country or your region, just make sure that they're aware of that the course is a professional qualification, and it is for people who are working in education or who have worked in education before. It would be great if we could offer that option with the qualified teacher status, but the complexities around it with different regions, different countries, and Scotland, for example, requires you to be in country to do this. So we have an alternative program that lets you do that, but you have to come to Scotland to actually do that. So yeah. So my advice is check out on a regional level, on a national level, what it is that they accept, and give them the details of our course through the website, and from that they should be able to decide whether it's sufficient or not.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Anjitha, Dr. Richard is quite correct. Our academic consultant can provide you with all the relevant details of the program, and you would then need to submit that to the authorities in India, and they'll be able to advise you on that as well. A very popular question.
I should add that I do quite a lot of teaching with the full-time students who come here for a year, and we do have quite a few students from India, and I'm always extremely impressed with their their knowledge of education, their experiences, their background, who's contributed a great deal. So yeah, it's always great to hear from somebody who's working in education in India.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is a very popular question that does come up quite often, is can I start off with a postgraduate certificate and then at a later stage continue with my qualification to M.Ed, or do I have to do the M.Ed straight away? So, which is a very popular question.
Yeah, so absolutely you can, and in fact the way that because it's modular, the way it works is that you can complete 2 of the modules and you can exit with a certificate, and then maybe 6 months or a year or even a couple of years later you could come back and you could re-engage with us, and you would apply again through the same route, but this time you would declare that you wanted to claim recognition of prior learning. It's sometimes called accreditation of prior learning, so it would be RPL or APL. And what that would allow us to do is we'd be able to check that you had if it was with the University of Dundee still, we could see that you had those SCQF level 11 credits, those 60 credits from the certificate, and that would give you advanced entry, so you could do another further 60 credits and get the diploma, or another 120 to have 180 in total, and that would give you the full M.Ed. So yes, we would encourage that, and in fact, if somebody is signed up to do the full M.Ed, the full 3-year course, and maybe at the end of the 2nd year, possibly their job situation has changed, maybe their situation at home has changed, they've maybe moved countries or something, and we can allow temporary withdrawals. But we sometimes say to people, well, why don't you exit with the diploma, and then you can see maybe in a couple of years' time if you want to re-engage, and we can then allow you to complete the full dissertation and get the full M.Ed. When you do that, what we ask you to do then is our registry department asks you to send the certificate back. So if you've done 2 modules, 60 credits and got the certificate, we ask you when you re-engage to send that back, because those credits can't really be used for both. We can't use some of those credits to give you the certificates and then use them towards a diploma and give you the diploma as well. Effectively, the diploma replaces the certificate. Now, we say to people, we'd like people to come back within about 5 years, because those credits need to be fairly current, because things change and things move on. But if you had queries about that and you opted to do the certificate or the diploma and then exit, we would say, you know, communicate with Stafford, communicate with potentially with Christy as the program manager, or whoever is the program lead at the time. You're given an advisor of studies who is not your module leader and is not one of your tutors, but is somebody who will be there for you and can answer any sort of general questions like this, and they'd be able to give you some guidance and some advice on that as well. So yeah, I didn't really mention that advisor of studies. We should probably add that to the presentation, Helen, because it's quite a nice it's a nice additional support that you'll have as part of the as a student at Dundee too. So yeah, so yes, the answer is you can, as long as it's within a reasonable timescale.
Good, and we have a question from Bongani, who's actually in Kenya. Okay, so welcome all the way from Kenya. His question is, how long can I stretch my qualification? What is the maximum time frame that I can complete my master's program?
Okay, so we would say 3 years. So 3 years is the usual time for it. There is an option if you're having difficulties and you have to give evidence for whatever it might be. It might be a change in circumstance, it might be job pressures, it might be health issues. So you can take temporary periods of temporary withdrawal, and just so as to cause minimal disruption to your studies, that would probably be a 6-month period, because it would allow you to re-engage with the next group. So you'd effectively just miss one of the modules and then re-engage 6 months later. So we have this temporary withdrawal option. What we try to encourage people to do is, if they need to take more time than that, is to exit with a certificate or exit with a diploma, because that makes more sense for you, and then apply for recognition of prior learning or accreditation of prior learning to rejoin the program later. You can take multiple periods of temporary withdrawal, but there is a timeline, a limit to which point you really need to be finishing your studies, and this is so that someone's not just continually taking temporary withdrawals, and that's usually about 5 years. So it's normally 3 years, but we would say we probably want you to be finished within about 5 years, and if not, we'd probably encourage you to exit the program, and then you could possibly come back a few years later to that. So yeah.
Good. Okay, so I hope that answers your question there, Bongani. And also just a follow-up, sorry, I'm just reading Bongani's other question. Oh, okay, so the next question would be, so if I start on a normal route, can I go to the fast track option, or can I chop and change? If I start with a fast track option, can I go back to a normal route?
Yeah, we do have that option available, and what we would say then is discuss this with your advisor of studies. And they would be able to say, so say you started on the normal route and you completed the first module and you did really well with it. And you thought, I'm finding this really manageable. You know, I've managed to manage my time. I'm organised very well. I'd actually now like to go to fast track and do 2 modules, so I can finish a little bit faster in the next semester. You talk to your advisor of studies about it before the next module started, so we've got time to make that change. and then we'd be able to arrange that for you and get you added to 2 modules for the second semester. The other way around would be that, say, you'd started on the fast track and you were doing, say, reflecting upon practice, and you were doing, say, the innovation in education module side by side, and you realize that was a lot. Doing 35 hours study alongside a full-time job was just too much for you. We would say get in touch as soon as you realize this, even during that first semester, that first module, and let your advisor of studies know, and we would be able to make that change for you as well. And it does happen from time to time. What we'd really encourage is you think long and hard before you make that decision, because it's possibly easier maybe to move to the fast track if you're finding things really easy. If you start on the fast track and you become overwhelmed, it can cause problems, and sometimes you might have to take temporary withdrawals and things like that. It can put quite a lot of stress on you if you're struggling to cope with it. So if you are contemplating the fast track at any point, do give it serious consideration as to how you're going to manage that and what you've got going on. Having said that, some people do it very, very successfully and manage really, really well. We had somebody recently who was a full-time teacher who was actually based in the UK, and they were working full-time, and they managed to complete their master's fast track, and yeah, they did really well on their dissertation. They got a distinction, I think, at the end of it all as well. So some people are able to manage that. Yeah.
Excellent, good. And we have 2 last questions here. The first one is, when is the graduation? And how do I get my degree if I do not attend the graduation?
Great question. Okay, so let me get this right. So if you were to start the next, so say you were doing the 3-year part-time masters, and you were starting next April, so at the end of April, the graduation for that would be, I'm trying to work this out, so it would take you, a year would take you to April 2025. That would be your first year, and then it would be April 2026. So you'd probably be looking at finishing around the sort of the spring of 2027, and that would mean that we would possibly be able to have you, I think, processed in time for the summer graduation, I think. Now, I'm not absolutely sure about that, but it would probably be summer of 2027. You'd be invited to come along to the graduation, which takes place in June, and then if you can't, you would still graduate, but what you would do is you'd say you graduate in absentia, and what that means is that your name would still be in the booklet that is put out there that everybody sees. Your name would still be available on the website and everything at the university, and what they would do is the registry team would post the certificate out for you. If you are able to attend, it's absolutely brilliant. We'd love to see you. The academic team are always delighted to meet people that have been communicating with and supporting with and working alongside as online students, and it's a great celebration in Dundee. The City Hall is a great location. You can go onto Google Earth and you can look at it. So it's in City Square. It's a great big grand Victorian era square. They deck it out with the University of Dundee banners. It's a beautiful big open hallway, and all the academic staff wear their gowns on the stage, and all the students get an opportunity to stand up, and everybody cheers and claps, and you walk across the stage and you're given your scroll and you wear your gown, and then afterwards there's a garden party in the university where you're invited and your friends and family are, where there's a chance to have a celebratory drink and maybe meet some more of the staff. And if it's the summer graduation in June, it's usually really nice sunny weather. We don't always get sunshine in Scotland, but if there's ever a time to come, then June is a good time to come, and it's always a great way to celebrate. So yeah, if you're not able to make it for graduation, absolutely that can be done. That can be done without you being here, and you can have your certificate sent out to you. But if you're able to make it as well, also that's wonderful. It's always great to see the success stories of students here in Scotland. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We do encourage it because it is a very auspicious occasion. You've worked very, very hard for it. So.
Oh yeah, very much. Yeah.
Okay, and I'll just answer the very last question, and I've managed to sort of squeeze everything together. It's pertaining to the fees. The reason why we haven't put the fees in the slides is because it depends on which route you're going to take. If you're taking a normal route or if you're taking a fast track route, so it's really quite difficult to put all that information in the slides. So please do get in touch with your academic consultant. They'll be able to provide you with the relevant payment plan. which is very, very flexible. We have quite a few flexible payment options available to our applicants, and do get in touch with your academic consultant to see if you may qualify for any scholarships that are available at the time. Okay. Right, so thank you very much, everyone, for joining me this evening. And again, what a pleasure having you with us, Dr. Richard. As Dr. Richard said, the application deadline is in March next year, so please do send your applications in as early as now, because we do have limited places available for the program. And the applications are open for this program already. So please do send these applications through, and I hope to see you all on this program next year in April. Thank you very much, Dr. Richard, and a good night to all.
Lovely to meet you all. Thank you so much.